Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be doing a video of all of the series that I have completed. This has been such a daunting task and I have been putting this particular video off for so long just because I know it's gonna take me forever. But I've wanted to do it for quite a while, so here we are. So I've divided all of the series into age group. So first I'm gonna talk about childhood series that I've completed, then I'm gonna move on to young adult series that I've completed, and then I'll finally be ending with adult series that I've completed. So we're just gonna get into it because we've got quite a few to go. First and most obvious is the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. I read all 7 books as a child. I actually pre-ordered the first Harry Potter book before it came out, so I read it pretty much the day that it arrived on my doorstep, and it just forever changed my life. That one is pretty obvious and goes without saying. The next childhood series that I read in its entirety is the Goosebumps series, and I'm talking about the main 62 book series by R.L. Stine, not the offshoots like the Fear Street books and stuff. I did read some of those, but I didn't read all of them, whereas I read all 62 Goosebumps books. I feel like the ones that I enjoyed the most and the covers that I love the most are still very telling of my tastes today. For instance, I just remember loving the cover of Beware of the Snowman. I think that just sums me up as a person. I also remember loving Say Cheese and Die and Monster Blood for sure. I have always been tempted to reread a couple of these just because I remember loving them so much, but I have no doubt that they just do not hold up. The next childhood series that I completed in its entirety would be the Babysitter's Club series by Anna Martin. I was just obsessed with these books. I took them out from the library. I remember reading the first book, Christy's Great Idea, finding out that Christy's name was actually Kristen Amanda, and my name is Kristen, and my best friend's name was Amanda. So I was really excited to find out that we shared a name, that we both really liked planning things, and I was like, I should start my own Babysitter's Club, which obviously never happened. And quite honestly, I was not someone that really enjoyed babysitting either. But I just found these books to be so much fun. I liked that they followed girls with such distinct personalities and different styles, though Claudia was always my favorite. I also read all of the Sweet Valley High books by Francine Pascal, and these ones follow twins named Elizabeth and Jessica, the Wakefield twins. They're identical. They got into some crazy shenanigans. I recently went back and read some of the synopses for certain books, and I was like, how did I not think that this was the craziest premise I've ever heard in my life when I was a child reading all of these? I just accepted them as sure, this is happening, this is fine. And then sometimes really life-changing things would happen, but then by the next book, they just, didn't really talk about it and kind of moved on with life as normal. But again, they were really fun. I always wanted to be part of the Unicorn Club, and I really wanted to paint my room purple, but my parents wouldn't let me do it. I also read the Chronicles of Narnia series as a child. These ones I really enjoyed as well. I have been kind of wanting to go back and give these ones a reread and see how I feel about them now as an adult, but I haven't done so in a while. And finally, I read the Lord of the Rings series by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is a forever favorite of mine, and this is another one that I've also been recently considering rereading, I think in 2020, probably in March, so that I can do Middle-earth March. We'll see what happens, because I feel like my TBR is pretty big at the moment. Then as far as teen reads go, one series that I completed was The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. This followed 4 girls who had one magical pair of jeans that happened to fit all of them, even though they were all very different body types, and they're a group of 4 best friends, but they are each having their own summer experiences, and they send these pants to each other so that each of them can kind of chronicle what happens to them while they're wearing these magic pants and still kind of feel connected with one another. I thought this series was really great when I was younger. It's another one that I haven't read in a really long time, so I have no idea how it holds up. I also read the entire Gossip Girl series by Cecily von Ziegeiser, probably not saying her name correctly. I actually read the Gossip Girl series in its entirety a total of 2 times. I remember being obsessed with these books when I was younger, and then I was really excited when the TV show came out, though it was totally different. It was not a loyal adaptation at all, which was fine because the show was its own thing and I also enjoyed that. But the books were definitely a bit more racy and the girls were a little bit more mean. Yeah, it was just a totally different story, but enjoyable. Not something that I would enjoy now, but I did enjoy it in high school. And then going going along with that, I also read the entire It Girl series by Cecily von Ziegeiser. This series actually followed one of the characters from Gossip Girl named Jenny. Jenny ends up like getting into a huge thing with the girls at Constance Billiard in the main Gossip Girl series. So then she gets sent to this boarding school and it follows her kind of adventures there and the girls that she becomes friends with there. And I thought that was a fun series as well. And then finally by Cecily von Ziegeiser, I also read Gossip Girl The Carlyles, which is kind of like the next generation of Gossip Girl, and it followed three siblings. I think there were three siblings named the Carlyles. I can't remember if they were triplets or if it was like twins and then their brother was older or younger. It doesn't really matter, but I read all of those too. I had great taste in high school, if you can't tell. I also read all of the Click series by Lacey Harrison. This is another one that I don't even know why I read it. I think like at that point, the section, like the young adult section in Borders was pretty small. So I kind of just grabbed anything that I hadn't read. And even if I didn't love it, I would read the whole thing because that was all that was available to me. I also read the whole Jessica Darling series by Megan McCafferty. I particularly liked the first couple of books the best of anything. I will forever love Marcus Flutie. And yeah, these books I just loved so much when I was in high school. And I'm like curious about so many of these if they would actually hold up. I also read the Au Pair series by Melissa De La Cruz. I don't honestly remember too much about. I know that there was like a beachy kind of cover and I think the covers were actually redesigned kind of recently, but it followed a bunch of au pairs who worked for like rich families and then it would talk about like, you know, their day babysitting and then like the fun things that they would do at night afterward when they were in these like places where they wouldn't normally get to be just because they were taken there by a rich family. I also read the A-List series by Zoe Dean. This series I honestly remember like nothing about, but I have a feeling the girl wanted to be an actress or something because A-List, cannot remember. I just know that I read all of them. And the same thing goes for the South Beach series by Amy Friedman. I know that this series took place in Florida and it had really like vibrant covers, which is why I was kind of drawn to it. But I think it was again another one that I didn't really love, but I just read because it was there. And then also in high school, I read the Shopaholic series by Sophie Kinsella. I believe that there have been a few books since I read them from high school throughout college, but I think that Sophie is like still writing Shopaholic books. So I technically have read most of the series, but I definitely haven't stayed current with the most recent books. So it's kind of like an honorary type mention. Now moving on to my college years, I actually didn't read a ton in college compared to what I had as a child or what I had once I graduated college. I definitely got way more like back into reading in my final year of college. I have like vivid memories of attending class and like being really excited to get back to my dorm room so that I could just like sit down and read or like binge a TV series or something. So starting with my first completed series in college, that was the Twilight series by Stephanie Meyer. This is one that I didn't really enjoy, but everybody was talking about, so I wanted to read it and form my own opinions about it. I thought it was fun for what it was until I got really angry in, I believe it was the third book. I finished it, but I didn't overall love the series. Like it just wasn't my favorite thing. I have nothing against people who love Twilight, but it personally just wasn't like a favorite of mine. And I'm also not someone that like hates on it so much. I just have like kind of ambivalent feelings about it. I actually didn't even see all of the movies. I think only saw the first two movies. Then I read the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins. This one obviously everybody knows about, and I saw all the movies for this one. I actually didn't enjoy the Hunger Games as much as other people seem to. I was expecting the Hunger Games to take place over the course of the 3 books. I wasn't expecting like the Hunger Games to be done within the first book. That was so surprising to me, and I just felt like there could have been so much more to like extend the story. I still did find it enjoyable. Didn't love it, but I read it and I liked it. And then I also read a middle grade series when I was in college, and this series is to this day still one of my favorites, and that is the Peter and the Starcatcher series by Dave Barry and Ridley Pearson. This series is a prequel to the Peter Pan novel by J.M. Barrie, and I really enjoyed it. There's like an infamous pirate called the Black Stash. We're following Peter before he actually has a last name. Him and his friend are trying to protect this treasure, which is Stardust, from the pirates for reasons, and I just highly recommend it if you enjoy Peter Pan at all. I really think that you'll enjoy this series as well. And I also really loved the adaptation, the like Broadway show, or was it off Broadway? I don't know. I saw the play version and that was super fun as well. It was a really interesting interpretation. I think Disney was supposed to make these into movies at some point and they still haven't, but I'm really hoping that they will because I just really love the series. And now moving on to recent years in young adult fantasy and sci-fi, I have completed The Raven Cycle, which I talk about on my channel quite a bit because I really enjoy this series very, very much. It's one that I have read multiple times and I just have such a soft spot for all of these characters. I know that it's not for everyone, but it is so very much for me. I also read the Throne of Glass series in its entirety. This is just a dust jacket because I got the really pretty dust jackets from Juniper Books recently and I put those ones on. You can actually see a photo of them on my Instagram, but I really enjoy the series. I know it's like quite a controversial one, but it's one of my all-time favorites. I truly enjoy it. I think Sarah is really great at writing characters and I just forever will love Manon and Dorian. They're like my people. I really want to give this series a reread actually because I really do enjoy it that much. And then of course, speaking of Sarah, I also completed the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, including the novella A Court of Frost and Starlight. I know that she's going to be coming out with more books in this series, but as of right now, this story arc is completed and it's a series that I have completed. So I really love these as well. My friend Jill recently has been reading them and I've just been like living for her texts. They're so much fun and they're also making me want to reread these. I also read the Lunar Chronicles series by Marissa Meyer. This is a sci-fi series that is a fairy tale retelling. Each book follows a different kind of fairy tale character, the first one following Cinderella. I really loved this series. I think it was a really fun way to retell fairy tales. I would say that this kind of got me back into young adult fiction because I really hadn't been reading that much young adult at that point in my life, but I binge read Cinder in one day and I loved it and I just moved on to Scarlet, which I didn't love as much, but then Cress brought everything back around for me and I thought that Winter was a really great finale as well. Then of course I have all of the Cassandra Clare series, so I read the entirety of The Mortal Instruments. This series I actually did not like until the 6th and final book, which I don't know why I even pushed through, but I'm glad that I did because I ended up enjoying the last one. I think that Cassandra got so much better as a writer as the books progressed. If I didn't have my friends like urging me to keep reading, I definitely would have DNF'd this series after the first one, but alas, I read all 6 and I've completed the series. And I've also read the entirety of the Infernal Devices series by Cassandra Clare. This one I enjoyed exceptionally more than The Mortal Instruments. This is still probably my favorite series by Cassandra Clare to date. I think it's just because I have such a soft spot for these characters and I love when they are revisited in current works. Love this series. And I have also read the whole Dark Artifices series by Cassandra Clare as well. This series I also think is a fantastic series. It definitely goes off the rails a little bit there at the end, but I still overall just had a fun time reading it. Like it was just a blast. I also read the Strange the Dreamer duology by Laini Taylor. This one is one of my all-time favorite series. I think Laini Taylor's writing is just gorgeous. Like it's unparalleled. Like it's just some of the best writing that I've ever read. I totally fell in love with the series from page 1 and I loved both books and yeah, cannot recommend these ones enough. I also completed the Passenger duology by Alexandra Bracken. This one, I so much love the first book in this series, but I did not really care for the second book, Wayfarer. I'm curious if I reread them closer together if I would have different feelings about the second one, but I know I just loved Passenger so much and that's kind of what has kept me holding on to these books, and the reason that I haven't unhauled them yet despite not liking the second one is just because of the strong feelings that I had about this first one. There's time travel, there are pirates, it's awesome. They're like, there's this artifact and it's just so great. I also read the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. This one actually is the opposite of Passenger, so I thought the first book was like pretty okay, but then I loved Crooked Kingdom and that has kind of cemented this as a series that I really love. Still have to finish the Grisha trilogy. I still have one book to go in there and I need to just like do it already and then potentially reread these because I definitely didn't pick up on like the Easter eggs and stuff from the Grisha trilogy when I read them because I ended up reading Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Not first because I read Shadow and Bone, but I hadn't even read the second book at the point when I picked these ones up. I also completed the Frostblood saga by Ellie Blake. This is a trilogy series and it has elemental magic and I really enjoyed the first book. I enjoyed the second book even more. I thought that one was like amazing, and then to be honest the third book was a little bit of a letdown. I overall liked the series as a whole and I think it's worth reading if you like elemental magic. I also read the Wrath and the Dawn duology by Renee Audier. This is another one where I really enjoyed the first book but I didn't really super love the second book, and I have actually unhauled of these books, but I did enjoy them when I read them. I thought that they were fun. I also completed the His Fair Assassin trilogy by Robin Lefevers. She has since come out with a sequel to the trilogy, but it's a separate series. So His Fair Assassin, I completed all 3 in the series. I really enjoyed these like way more than I was expecting to. They're fantasy books. They take place either in the 1500s or 1600s in Brittany, and they are just full of political intrigue, and I really enjoyed all 3 of them. I also read and completed the Winners trilogy by Marie Wartkowski. This was a really fun series because I very much enjoyed the dynamic between our main characters, Kestrel and Aaron, and I really liked that Kestrel was not really a fighter, but she was more of a strategist, and that was just something that I had like previously not really read in fantasy as being a strength, and I really appreciated and enjoyed that series. I also read and completed the Keepers' Chronicles by Becky Wallace. It's a fantasy duology series about a bard, and I loved it so much. It was so unique, so unlike anything that I had read before, and it was also a Hispanic inspired fantasy, so it had a lot of different elements going for it. I particularly was drawn to the bard aspect, and this is something that I've been considering giving a reread because I really did love this series a lot. I also read and completed the Daughter of the Pirate King duology by Trisha Levenseller. I thought this was just like a really fun, good time, but this is another one where I really loved the first book, and then the second book just didn't really do it for me. Like, I thought that it was good, but it wasn't as good as the first, in my opinion. I also read the Archived duology by Victoria Schwab. This one is hopefully going to be a trilogy at some point. Honestly, doesn't seem very likely with how many other books Victoria is publishing, and yeah, that's really disappointing. So this has been a 2-book series for years now. If a third one ever comes out, I will read it the day that it is released, but I love the series so much. It follows a girl who is a keeper, so when souls kind of go lost or like she sees ghosts, she has to get them to go through a door so that they can be returned to the library and shelved where they're supposed to be kept. They're referred to as histories. There's kind of like a horror element going on in here, and I just honestly love this so much. And there's a character that was inspired by David Tennant's Doctor. The whole thing just really spoke to me. I loved it so much. Then I also read and completed the Chaos Walking trilogy by Patrick Ness. This was a really unique series, and I really enjoyed it when I read it, but it's not something that I foresee myself rereading, so I ended up unhauling it, but I did truly enjoy the whole thing. It takes place in a town where everyone can hear everyone else's thoughts, and it's all men too, but one day the main character finds this girl and he's unable to hear her thoughts, and then his town and him are kind of at war with one another, and things just get like real crazy, but it was really fascinating. I also read and completed the Warcross duology by Marie Lu. This is one that I really enjoyed because it follows a girl who is a hacker, and she ends up getting hired to find a security threat within this video game called Warcross, which is like a huge MMORPG where a lot of people live out like their whole lives. It really surpassed my expectations, and I really enjoyed it. And again, this is one where I loved the first book, and then I enjoyed the second book, but I definitely liked the first book a lot more. I also read the Everlist duology by Sarah Holland. This is another one where I loved the first book, and then I actually really didn't like the second book at all, and that got me to unhaul both of them. But it had a really unique premise. It takes place in a world where time is currency, so in order to like pay debts, you have to give up years of your life, so they like will extract blood from you and turn it into like a blood iron, which is like a coin, and it'll be a certain amount of years, and you could like put it in your tea and drink it in order to gain years. But obviously nobles have a whole bunch of years, like more years than they really know what to do with, and the poor people are really suffering and losing years off of their lives every single day. But then there's this whole other subplot going on with an alchemist and a sorcerer. I thought the first one was a really good book, and then the second one just kind of dropped the ball. And then as far as other young adult series that I've completed that aren't sci-fi or fantasy go, this is our next category. They're all kind of hard to get to because they are behind the chair that I'm sitting on, so I'm just gonna put in images for each of the series that I mentioned. The first one being the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy by Jenny Han. This is one of my favorite contemporary series that I've read. It follows Lara Jean. It was adapted for Netflix. I think most people know what it's about, but I personally really loved it. I think Lara Jean and I had a lot in common, and she was like a kindred spirit. This one I actually actually can reach. And that is the Summer series by Jenny Han. This series honestly wasn't my favorite thing. It's not something that I would reread, but it was fine. And I also completed the Burn for Burn trilogy by Jenny Han and Siobhan Vivian. This one was a wild ride because I went in expecting a contemporary trilogy, and then it kind of took a turn during book 2 that I was not anticipating, and I was totally surprised, never saw it coming. And I actually like binge read all 3 of these in a row because I was just like, what even is happening? I also completed the Anna trilogy by Stephanie Perkins. This is like Anna and the French Kiss, Lola and the Boy Next Door, and Isla and the Happily Ever After. My favorite in the series was Isla and the Happily Ever After, but I did really enjoy all of these when I read them. I think I would still enjoy them. I did really enjoy the Paris aspect. They were just like cute contemporary romances, and they were a companion series. I also read the Pivot Point duology by Casey West. This one I found to be really interesting because although it had like a sci-fi element to it, it read more like a contemporary, which is what Casey West is known for. It follows a girl who has the ability to see into the future. When her parents are getting divorced, she has the option of either living with her mom or living with her dad, so she uses her power to foresee what would happen depending on who she lived with, and then ends up making her choice at the end of the book, and it was quite good. I also read the If I Stay duology by Gail Forman. This one followed a girl who got into a car accident and lost her whole family, and then she was in a coma, and she's kind of like outside of her body deciding whether she wants to come back to consciousness and continue living, or like knowing that she no longer has a family, just kind of give up and let go. And it was really powerful and emotional. I really loved the first book. I didn't really like the second book. I also read the Dash and Lily duology by David Levithan and Rachel Cohn. This one is just a really fun like Christmas duology, and a lot of the first book took place at the Strand bookstore, which is my favorite bookstore in New York, and I love Christmas, so I just really enjoyed both of these books. I also read the Nantucket duology by Layla Howland. This is a series that I ended up loving so much more than I was expecting to, but it follows a girl who goes to Nantucket for the summer, and she's having some issues with her best friend, and then her and her best friend's brother kind of start a little romance, and it's really cute, and it's just like a fun summery beach read. I also read all 3 books in the Creekwood series by Becky Albertalli, which is Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, The Upside of Unrequited, and Leah on the Offbeat. I really loved Simon and The Upside of Unrequited, but I did not like Leah, unfortunately, though I do enjoy Becky Albertalli's writing style very much, so I'm definitely looking forward to whatever she comes out with next. I also read the Montague Siblings duology by Mackenzie Lee. These are The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue and The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. Both of them I thought were such fun rides. I really enjoyed the first book more so than the second book, but I thought both of them were very well done and just really fun reads. I also read the Fixer duology by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is another one that was, I think, technically supposed to be 3 books, but only 2 books were purchased by the publisher. So the series has kind of ceased at 2 books, and if there is ever a future book, I would be really excited to read it, but as of now, it's a 2-book series, and I read it and I really loved it. It was a political kind of thriller. The second book was a lot better than the first book, even though I did really enjoy the first book too. It also left me really wanting a 3rd book, so I'm still pretty devastated that that one isn't necessarily going to be published. And then finally, the last few years of adult fantasy and sci-fi series that I have completed, and this is our final section of the video. I read the full Shades of Magic trilogy by Victoria Schwab. I really love this trilogy, if you can't tell from like the million copies that I have on my shelf behind me. I thought it was a really good series, and it just got better and better with each book, and I'm really looking forward to the follow-up series that Victoria's writing, which is called Threads of Power. I also read the Shattered Sea trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. This one I really loved. I just kind of flew through these books. They were so quick-paced and so enjoyable, and the characters that Joe Abercrombie wrote were so fascinating. I know that a lot of people consider this series to be YA, but I honestly felt like it read more adult than young adult, but maybe it's just kind of like a crossover series, but I really, really enjoyed this one. I also completed the Themis Files by Sylvain Neuvel. This is an adult science fiction series. There is a mysterious hand that appears on Earth, and then we follow a girl named Rose who spends pretty much her entire life trying to figure out what it means, where it came from, the implications of this hand. I really like this novel a lot because as the series continues, everything kind of needing to be examined on a global scale, and different countries need to really come together to try to figure out what is going on and how they can save their world. And I really enjoyed the characters. I think the audiobooks of these are out of this world. Like, they're incredible. Highly recommend this series. I also completed the Magician's Trilogy by Lev Grossman. This is one where the first book I had like 3 or 4 false starts. I read to page 70 like every time and then just gave up on it until I finally read the full thing in its entirety. And I will say that the second half of the book was much better than the first half of the book, but I still didn't love it. I thought the main character was kind of insufferable. I don't know why I decided to continue on, but I'm really glad that I did, because this is another one where each book in the series just gets better and better, and the characters end up having a huge story arc. They just undergo so much character growth, and how immature they are from the beginning to how mature they are by the end is something that I really very much enjoyed experiencing. So I would say if you read this series and you don't love the first one, I would still give the second book a chance and see how you feel. And then finally, my most recently completed series is the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. I love this series. This has ended up turning into one of my favorite all-time series, so spoilers for that video. But this series just has such an incredible magic system. I love it so much. I love our main characters, Vin and Elend. I love the whole crew that they have. It's just so good from start to finish. Each book, the stakes get higher and higher, and it just culminates in like this insane final book. And I just cannot recommend it enough. I love it. I'm really looking forward to reading the second era of Mistborn, but the first era will be a forever favorite of mine. So that's it. Those are all of the series that I have completed in my lifetime so far that I remember or have cataloged on Goodreads. And yeah, I'm really excited to have this one filmed. But that's all that I have for this video, and I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!